Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. May I invite you to come a little bit to this side so that we have a clearer view, otherwise it's so spread out. So if you could sit a little bit here more in the front of us, it looks much more exciting for all of us. I suggest, because we have to gain some time this afternoon, because we have to close our in-depth sessions at 4:30, so that we have still translation for the closing session. So I hope that everybody is cooperating with that, especially the presenters of this afternoon. There is again, of course, interpretation available. So without any other delay, I will go now into session number 2, and that's connecting farmers to technologies, changing threats to opportunities. And I said this morning, only if we give and make available the technologies we have, the crops we have, the funding we have to the farmers, we can make a difference and we can avoid drought to become a famine. The question, of course, is how do we do it? And we have 2 showcases. The first showcase presenter is Ms. Kate Vellenberg from the International Maize and Wheat Improvement, and secondly, Mr. Twaldebrand Arbra from the Project Concern International. And I do apologize if I pronounce your name wrongly, but I'm used to it because my name is also very difficult. I'll give now the floor to Ms. Kate Vellenberg. Oh, sorry.
To be efficient in time, I started over here.
Could you put...
Hello. All right. Good afternoon. In the interest of time, I will not do long introductions, but we'll get right to the point. I was asked to speak a little bit about a project that I'm running with CIMMYT to talk about bringing innovations to the farmers, and I'm happy to hear so many of the ideas and themes that were already repeated this morning by some of our speakers. I work out of Nairobi. The themes I want to try to emphasize today is a few things. I really want to emphasize the last mile, and I will explain that in a bit, connecting the dots, and assuming nothing. So I work with CIMMYT. I have some of my colleagues here at the other CG centers. I won't spend too much time here. Many of you are familiar. CIMMYT was most famous for the green revolution of the 60s by Dr. Borlaug with the dwarf wheat for India and Pakistan. It's 50 years old. It's in all of these countries. We have 5 programs. One of them is maize. The technology that this project focuses on, the technology that my project is to bring to the farmers, is maize seed, improved hybrids. Very quick background is, before this project started in 2014, it's a 4-year project, 14 to 18. The 8 years before that, CIMMYT invested a lot of money to develop drought-tolerant maize varieties. Very quickly, what we mean by drought, being very specific, is these varieties resist drought if a drought occurs during the flowering phase. They developed over 200 new types of maize. At the moment, there's about 75 of these being commercially produced. The project, very quickly, let's see if we go back there, 6 countries, most of the Rift Valley. We have some major objectives. Most of it is on the supply side. CIMMYT provides, by our mission, parent seed materials and technical advice to anybody in the world who requests it. We work with seed companies and public agencies. This project is a little bit new, a little bit different for CIMMYT. CIMMYT is a research agency. It's not for profit. We have a mission of the public good. It's 50 years old. It is not a private seed company. It does not know too much. It's not specialized on the private sector. It does research. Most of our staff are PhDs. I am not. That makes a big difference where I'm working, but we're now working a little bit more downstream. and the knowledge management. So in this project alone, 6 countries, 30 technical staff, the partners, these are our objectives. Trying to produce extra tonnage of the new maize varieties, covering so many hectares, farmers, and people. Okay. The project name is DT MASS, Drought Tolerant Maize for Africa Scaling Seed, which is very long. Scale. I'm glad members of EFAD are here. Before this, I was working in Washington with EFAD and USAID, who did a lot to pioneer scaling in agriculture. So I'd like to thank and recognize EFAD for that. Scaling, to bring it down very quickly, one way that I explain it is if the size of the solution fits the size of the problem. Many of us work in development, and as we know, because of political and financial constraints, we have a 1, 2, 3-year project. It's a small place and only covers so much. Very difficult to achieve impact and scale. Most of development occurs in that first part around effectiveness, trying out new technologies. Sometimes we get to go a little bit further towards efficiencies, which gets into systems, but the sustained impact, of course, is higher up. Again, with scale, many people use this word. It's a bit like sustainability was 10 years ago. Scaling, usually people think of scaling out, which is the expansion. If you go to more places, you reach more farmers, you reach new populations. A lot of managers will say, if you give me more money, I can scale it out. Yes, you can scale it out, but to be sustainable, you also have to scale it up, which is institutionalizing it. We'll get into that a bit later. So this project, what's our approach? Our approach is to incentivize scaling this out. We have all these new maize seeds, but again, CIMMYT is not a seed production company. So we've developed this wonderful maize. Now the question is how to get it to the farmer. As many of us know from research, to the farmer, there's about 19 steps. That's the challenge. We do a few innovations, which I'll get into in a moment, but the incentives that we're trying to work with our different partners along the value chain, we have to incentivize this. There has to be a benefit for the stakeholders beyond the project. They can't just do it because we're paying them to do it at the moment. So with seed companies, we've stepped beyond just giving them the seed of a better product, because frankly, a lot of them said, I don't need a better product. I make plenty of money with the same seed I've been selling for 40 years. Why should I change? It's a good question. Why should they change? So we have to also work to make sure that this seed is producible, meaning efficient, cost-efficient to produce, and we help them to generate demand. Because why would they produce a seed that no one has heard of? We work with stockists and farmer networks and associations. They also have to be incentivized to create awareness and to try to sell this new seed. If you speak to an agricultural stockist in a village or a district in Tanzania, he's already selling, I have 1 minute. He's already selling many things. So again, we have to incentivize him to sell this product. We also have to educate him why it's better and help him make this profitable. Or again, once the project ends, most of the impact will end. For farmers, they also have to be incentivized. That's pretty simple. Higher yields, more income. That's straightforward. The themes of this seminar today: renewed, integrated, and proactive. I love it that we talk about renewed. There's many conferences and a lot written about innovation. I'm not going to present anything new today. There's no space-age technology. There's no new app. Nothing like that. We have all that. Bill Gates once said, we don't need new things. We have lots of things. We are flooded with things. We need better processes and cooperation. Integrated, this is what I meant about connecting the dots, and being proactive, again, which is a theme here. But within CIMMYT, it's 50 years old. One of the challenges we had is CIMMYT has done what it's done for decades. It's a huge agency, 1,500 people across the world. So for a long time, they did the research, they developed the maize, they developed the wheat. Go home, our job is done. We have to connect the dots, and there's a lot of assumptions. If you're a scientist, I will keep putting it this way, check your assumptions. Don't assume that if you get a seed company a better product, they will take it up. There's a lot of time and cost to change over to a new product. Farmers also, we've learned, they take 2 or 3 seasons to try a new crop before they will really plant it at scale. It takes time. People in agriculture know this. So a lot of the technologies we already have. The key message is to collaborate and not duplicate. And yes, must go to the farmer. So this is another thing with development, and I'll go very quickly. How we design, very linear. We have the seed, give it to the seed producer, magically it will get to the farmer. Something will happen. In reality, you can see how messy that is. This is what the farmer is surrounded by. The projects may or may not impact them. The local systems may or may not be effective. There may or may not be a good extension network. Ethiopia has a fantastic extension network. Kenya does not. So you can't just assume we can use the same model and the same way to distribute and get things out. An ideal situation would have the farmer at the heart of it, with all of us going around that. I'm moving quickly. Another key message, you're never the only player. A lot of our efforts are designed on a laptop in Rome or New York or Brussels. And that's fine, that's how we have to work. But we know this, but we don't do this well enough. You're not the only player out there. Don't act like it. So we try to design programs and projects that will solve the whole problem, which is nearly impossible. And we don't work with a lot of the partners that are already on the ground. So some of the innovations of our project that, again, are innovative just in the way that we're using them. We are using some remote sensing data and also digital technology. We're helping a lot of our seed companies do market planning. Many seed companies, we work with right now about 55, but about 80 seed companies. And we surveyed them and we brought them together into country meetings and we asked them, how do you sell your seed? Where do you sell it? Who is selling it? Most of them don't know. They don't know. Few do. Most of them do not. Most of them will give it to one or two large distributors, and then beyond that it goes to the smaller dealer, then to the man on the motorcycle, and then to the woman of the farmers group. You ask a farmer, she also may or may not know. So there's huge data caps, and there's a breakdown of the chain. So we're helping to do some of this data. We work with all the partners, so what we do is we collect all that data, we map it out, and we have some business experts now who are working directly with some of these seed companies to say, you know what, you can't take on Seedco, for example, of Kenya, who has 80% of the market, but you can work very well with this product in this district at this altitude with these farmers. We're helping them with that, and they are loving it. So because we are research, we have a lot of data they cannot afford to get on their own. We have huge surveys of farmers. We have a lot of meteorological data. This is the incentive. Moving quickly, building capacity. I'll skip through that. Some of our partners are very high capacity. This is Niseko in Uganda. I was asked to focus on Uganda. They know where every single demonstration plot they do is. This is 2016. They know the varieties. They know how many farmers. This is rare. Out of my 60 partners, years. That's not the innovation. But the innovation is more just how you use it. Don't put your demo plot next to the seed company. Put it where the farmer can come. Other things that we learned is, again, traditional demonstration plots and agro-dealers. Some places in Uganda, mostly women farmers, 80% of them do not use agro-dealers. 80% of these farmers do not get their seed from agro-dealers. They get it from informal networks. So if you're spending all your time and your money and your grants working through agro-dealers and official mechanisms, you're missing 80% of the poor farmers. We're also using digital data. We're doing surveys plus information sharing with the farmer on cell phones. Very quickly, we're doing a survey right now, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, asking them what they planted last season, where did they buy their seed, and how much did they pay. Very simple but very critical data. And again, the names you see at the bottom are people who are already doing this. So these are partners, Isoko, FIPS, PAD, and I'm trying to reach out and to partner them because we don't have time to reinvent the wheel, but who is already out there. Also taking a lot of the scientific knowledge that CIMMYT has and putting it into simple formats for the farmer, because I think this is also a common issue with us. Many of this data and our innovations stay on our laptops. They don't get to the farmer. And that's about it. Let's see, what was the last one? So why don't we do this more? We talk a lot about collaboration. I've been doing development for about 25 years. It tends to stay in these rooms. It takes time. It takes political savvy, and it takes a lot of give and take. So I think we need to put more effort on actually making sure this touches ground. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We now turn quickly to our next introduce and showcase presenter, and that's Mr. Tubele Renbrand Arba from Project Concern International. You have the floor. And could you please be within the time limits?
Okay. Thank you. This is an innovation that we use, we introduce in pastoralists to manage their resource appropriately. This innovation originated when my organization was interviewed. My organization is PCI, Project Concern International, dispatched to respond to a drought in Ethiopia, in the eastern part of Ethiopia. Then we realized that there were people migrating for search of pasture and water. So they were migrating for weeks, for over 14 days, and yet they didn't get that resource. So we just brainstorm what we can do to help this community. So this is the initial part of the innovation. I mean the starting point of the innovation. Pastoralists, as you know, are mono-asset livelihood people, only dependent on livestock for food, for transport, and for any source of income. So their coping mechanism is always migration. So using that line, the most important part of this innovation is, without disrupting their livelihood system, how can we just better help them to better manage that process? In doing that, we started with the key issue of what is really the challenge. The challenge in this community is the source of information for migration. Mostly, for example, 95% they use Dagu, which is a local name for word of mouth, to migrate, where the pasture is. The second one is they send scout, 15%, I mean about 89% of them, and 67% they do indigenous knowledge based on their ancestors and others. So when we see the effectiveness of, or the reliability of this information, we realize that the Dagu, or word of mouth, is getting unreliable people. 71% of them reported that it's getting unreliable, and the scouts, 15%, is getting unreliable, and the indigenous knowledge is 92%. They reported is getting unreliable. These are the basis where we start to think how better can we help this community to have informed decision making for herd migration. So when we see the other finding in our baseline is the mortality rate because of that unreliable information. So in Ethiopia, in the Afar region, 37% they lost. They reported 37% of loss of livestock. I mean, the excess shows that the proportion of the herd position and the proportion of losses. In Tanzania, it's reported that 26% have lost their herds because of this traditional way of movement. Then what the partnership is, Project Concern International and the community. And when we see the monetary value of their losses, in the each household loses in Ethiopia $1,771 US for the losses that they encountered, and in Nairobi, I mean in Tanzania, is 2,885. So if you convert or project this one to a population of 100,000, it becomes this figure, 11.1 million in Ethiopia and 38.7 in Tanzania. Then if we assume that all the pastoralists in these two countries faces the same challenge or the same problem, then the country loses about 1.6 billion in Ethiopia and 1.7 billion in Tanzania in the 3 years that they reported the losses. So this was the benchmark for us to think what to do to help this community. Then there was an opportunity. This is a metrosat that is overlying the northern Africa and Europe that delivers meteorological information that can provide adequate early warning system avail to these communities. So based on this, we partner with the community, with USAID Development Innovation Venture, gave us some fund to do a concept testing, and we partner with the government Ethiopia, WFP, and the Halflut Spatial Solutions to come up with a map-based early warning system, a map that is being printed. This map is first developed locally using the traditional migration system or locations. This is first mapped by the community, then we build on that one or integrate with satellite information. So if you can see, it changes for every month. The grazing or the greenness of the same area is changing from month to month. So we supply this month every month. So in the first pilot area, which is only in one worada in the Afar region in Ethiopia, we achieved that. We observed that 48% of decline in losses of livestock, which encouraged us to move forward and increase our partnership to different partners. Like we expanded to Tanzania, and we added more partners and get more funds from Google and other organizations to expand this one. Then we continue distributing these maps. These are the maps that we distribute every 10 days so that they will do an informed herd migration decision making of this one. Then after intervening for a little over a year, we have done a midterm assessment. So in Ethiopia, the communities receive, the blue one is receive the map, and the red one is receive and using the map. So you can see still there is a huge gap on that one, which we need to deal with, but there is a huge utilization of the map. And the second one is the accuracy of the map. They reported the blue in Ethiopia, they reported that is accurate, and the blue one, the red one is in Tanzania. Then decision making, that is the blue one is how many people use this map for decision making for herd migration, and the orange one is in Tanzania. And utility or map utility, then you can see the orange one is in Tanzania, is getting 60% of the people use for utilized it for better managed pasture, improved livestock conditions, reduced livestock losses, and like that. That is the results that we got in the midterm assessment. So how does this innovation influence or affect or contribute to the early warning system and improving the reducing the burdens on the pastoralists? This is a framework that is adopted from FAO. So SAPARM, the blue, the primary action, or if this innovation helps us to increase the productivity because they are getting access to pasture early rather than moving for 14 or more days around. So these are the this one is the second level of importance of this project. So what's next? As we are using a paper-based, which is not sustainable, now we are converting it to a digital-based where these maps can be distributed to mobile applications so that everyone in the pastoralist can access it. We do a development of this one. And now we have developed the application and expanding to Kenya in addition to the two countries. So if this is continue to effect and if we improve on the awareness creation and like that, it will not only focus on the 3 countries, but it can expand to other pastoral communities across the region or Africa. So we are hoping to effect or to improve the lives of over 200 million people through this innovation. And thank you.
Thank you very much for your introduction. And now I would like to give the floor to moderate this session to Mr. Joseph Ahenda, who has been working to access to seeds for a long time and is now working for the FAO in Somalia. And as speakers, I would like to present Ms. Maria Isabel Andrade, an AGWA board member and prize winner, as well as Mr. Leith Ben Besher, former president and founder of the Syndicat des Agriculteurs de Tunisie. You have the floor, sir. Okay, yes, yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm taking this opportunity before I start to thank you to the organizer of this meeting for giving me this opportunity to be here to do this presentation. So, my presentation for this afternoon is connecting farmers to technologies and threats to opportunities. So, the examples I'm going to use is the crop that I'm very used to, which is sweet potato, what we are using to connecting farmers to technology. Drought is not new to me. Being from Sahel, at very early age, I experienced drought, and I also experienced the consequence or the impact that drought has on the food security. As I finished my program in 1995-96, there was a serious drought in Southern Africa, and I was recruited to come to the region to really establish a program which was using cassava and sweet potato to mitigate drought in the region. There was a program that took about 8 years. Also, later on, we realized that most of our introduction in sweet potato was from abroad, and when the drought comes, those introduced material from abroad never survive drought. So only some local material, which was not the material that we want, which is the white flesh, could survive. It was then that Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation put so much money for me in the region to establish a program to breed for drought for Southern Africa. But what was devastating in 2015 is through this work with AGRA as one of the border, that we managed to travel in the region and to realize what drought can make people so devastated in the region. You come to a certain place, you cannot see anything. All the maize is gone. Sometimes you see some little cassava or some sweet potato. So, right now we're going to see what is the role of technology is making agriculture production more efficient in feeding the growing population. As you know, in the drought of 2015 and 2016 in Southern Africa decreased the food production by 66%. And this led to emergency of food and an economic crisis throughout the region. As also know that 70% of Africans make a living through agriculture. And most of our food in Africa is coming from the smallholder farmers. And these smallholder farmers cannot even produce for themselves. They are very poor farmers. So there is a need to really work with these farmers to eradicate this extreme poverty. But more is on the board, more to come. We need to feed 9 million humans who will be living on this planet in 35 years. What can we do? It's been said that we need to double the amount of food available. Farmers will need to produce more food on less land because we don't want to cause more deforestation. So, for this work to take place, we need fund, we need good quality seed, we need private sector investment, we need combination of fertilizer, we need training, capacity training at all levels, from the bottom to the farmers and to the top. But, however, for us to be able to accomplish all this, technology must be changed. Myself as a plant breeder and a root crop breeder, in our breeding program with sweet potato, we address drought. For 10 years, I have been addressing drought in the region. In this program, we consider mechanisms for drought tolerance, ranging from morphological, physiological, and biochemical aspects. We use the use of selection index together, because as you select your sweet potato or cassava, if you select only for the yield and you don't look into those other traits, like quality traits, nutrition traits, like orange flesh, or the amount of iron and zinc in the sweet potato, probably later on the farmer will not adopt your material. So we really need to use all this selection index to be able to do. We also look into drought index of clones for various drought environments and selecting for the survival of the vines under drought environment. I remember when I first worked with sweet potato in the Southern Africa, we used to promote this variety that was bred in Georgia, in the US. And when we got this drought of 2003, all those introduced variety collapsed. It was then that we realized we must start a breeding program in Africa, for Africa, to benefit the people in the region, and with the spillover to other countries in Africa where there is also drought. Breeding for drought tolerance, however, took a different dimension in 2009. As you know, to really release a variety of sweet potato cassava, it takes 9 years. But which donor is going to invest in you 9 years for you to just bring one variety that you don't even know that the farmer is going to adopt it anyway? So, during this process, we invented what we call it accelerated breeding scheme. The accelerated breeding scheme, it is a process, instead of producing variety in 8 years, we managed to produce it in 4 years, using all science that you can use, and to prove that the scheme is a good one. Following this accelerated breeding scheme, in Mozambique, we managed to release 22 drought-tolerant varieties, which we are so proud of it because we sent some of these varieties in Abu Dhabi, and 5 of these varieties proved to be drought-tolerant and salt-tolerant. These materials are also in Bangladesh, under the salt zone of Bangladesh. So, but this is not the end of the work. We managed to produce variety in 2011 and also in 2016 using this accelerated breeding scheme. But once the variety are released, often the breeders are very reluctant, they just set back. But the work just begins now, because as you produce the variety, you need to disseminate this variety. Because always, if you know what the Norman Borlaug always said, get it to the farmers. And I have to get this variety to the farmers. But how you get it to the farmers? We need to put in place a sustainable seed system to bring the planting material to farmers, but using all kinds of mechanisms. Partnerships is critical. Sweet potatoes, as you know, are used as planting material. Experience proved that transporting the vine to a long distance is a very bad practice. So what we come up? We come up with what you call decentralized vine multiplier. What it is decentralized vine multiplier. We come to a remote community, we identify a farmer that is very good, that knows sweet potato, that's willing to make a business, and we start training them and multiply the vines. And this multiplier is supposed to produce vine to benefit about 100 farmers along the road. So, and this creates a lot of more networks. With this accelerating breeding scheme that was created in Mozambique and Peru, there is right now 14 countries in Africa that are already producing variety in 4 years using this scheme.
Madam, I'm sorry to interrupt, but could you please conclude?
Yes, it's coming. Also, to make it short, sweet potato is a vegetative propagate crop. We need to have the vine to do the work. So we invented what we call the triple S. Triple S, when the farmer don't need those roots, we get those roots and collect, we cure it, and we store it in sand and until the next rainy season. And also, to protect our material from virus contamination, we also come up with what we call the net tunnel, which are small greenhouses in the farm with the farmers where clean planting material are preserved for the next coming season. These are some of the small technology. But we do a lot of demand creation. We promote, we create brands so that the words come from farmer to farmer as a mechanism. Thank you.
So we'll welcome the second panelist. But I would prefer that they both speak after that, then you can have, I can field the questions. I think that will be better than breaking in between. So I would like to welcome Mr. Ben Bencha to give us his opening remark on the subject. So you go to the...
Okay.
Because I prefer it that way so that we don't have interruption in between. So Ben Bencha, go and give us your opening remarks. Then after that, inshallah, I'll have questions for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will speak in French. For me, it will be easier. En fait, quand j'ai été invité à parler devant vous, d'abord, bonjour à tout le monde. J'ai pas préparé de présentation au sens formel du mot, mais j'ai à la fois la difficulté de parler après des gens de grande qualité qui sont intervenus depuis ce matin, mais en même temps l'avantage d'avoir écouté et donc peut-être de vous apporter quelques réflexions et un témoignage de terrain, parce que contrairement à ce que mon apparence d'aujourd'hui laisse croire, je suis agriculteur et je ne fais que ce métier-là. Dans une région du monde qui ne connaît pas la sécheresse peut-être au sens où on nous l'a expliqué depuis tout à l'heure, mais ce par quoi je voulais dire, donc ce seront quelques idées rapides, c'est que dans la tragédie ou dans le malheur, passez-moi le terme, il y a toujours à choisir. Il y a un dicton arabe chez nous qui dit « Filham talqa tujad ma takhtar ». C'est-à-dire qu'il y a un gradient. On n'a pas nécessairement de sécheresse, mais on a de la rareté de l'eau qui peut confiner à la sécheresse. Et quand j'entends des fois des agriculteurs du sud de l'Europe parler de sécheresse parce que pendant un mois, il a moins plu que sur la moyenne d'une décennie, évidemment, il n'y a rien à voir avec ce qui se passe dans la Corne de l'Afrique ou dans le Sahel. Ça, c'est une première idée. Et en même temps, je pense par rapport à ce que j'ai écouté, mais par rapport à notre expérience, j'ai entendu avec intérêt le président de l'African Conservative Tillage parler tout à l'heure. Et je voulais dire aussi, non pas par chauvinisme, mais qu'il y a aussi autant, en général, autant d'agriculture, qu'il y a de la place pour autant de choix d'agriculture que de choix d'agriculture de conservation ou d'agroécologie. Pourquoi? Parce que finalement, c'est remettre un peu de raison dans ce que nous faisons. Et ma foi, par rapport à ce que nous vivons et ce que j'ai entendu, à un moment, peut-être, nous avons découplé deux actes majeurs. Notre métier est un peut-être des plus difficiles, mais un des plus beaux au monde, c'est de produire pour nourrir les autres. Mais produire pour se nourrir aussi soi-même et vivre avec suffisamment de revenus et avoir sa dignité. Et donc, l'agroécologie, première idée, il y a autant de modèles, il n'y a pas un idéal, mais il y a autant de modèles pour atteindre cet idéal avec trois principes de base. Je ne vais pas revenir sur la définition scientifique, mais en tout cas, c'est assurer la durabilité à travers une performance économique, donc produire pour soi-même et pour le pays dans lequel on est, social pour que les gens puissent continuer à travailler, à vivre dans les campagnes qui sont souvent les plus touchées par la pauvreté, si ce n'est pas par la famine, et environnemental parce que nous travaillons avec deux paramètres fondamentaux incontournables qui sont l'eau et le sol. Et l'interaction entre les deux est fondamentale. Et là-dessus, je voulais signaler que dans les pays du Maghreb, et dans mon pays en particulier, nous avions des expériences novatrices. Non seulement au niveau technique, puisque nous avons introduit, que ce soit du minimum tillage ou que ce soit du semis sur couvert, mais nous l'avons adapté parce qu'on sait que dans le monde, il y a autant de variantes entre le Brésil et l'Australie qu'il n'y a pas qu'une seule religion, parce que souvent c'est présenté par certains comme étant une secte. Je m'arrêterai pas là-dessus. Mais en même temps, parce que nous avions considéré, et ça c'est un constat, si j'ai encore 2 minutes que je voulais développer, c'est un constat que nous avons vécu nous autres agriculteurs partout au monde, mais chez moi en particulier, nous sommes à un seuil vraiment de water scarcity, de rareté de l'eau. Nous sommes à moins de 400 mètres cubes par capita et par an. Et quand on parle de ça, il faut savoir aussi que l'essentiel de l'agriculture dans les pays du Maghreb et d'Afrique du Nord d'une manière générale est une agriculture pluviale. Et c'est là-dessus qu'il faut travailler pour au moins stabiliser les rendements. Or, quand on voit ce qu'il y a chez nous, c'est énormément de rendements en dents de scie, et même là où nous avons en apparence de l'autosuffisance ou de la sécurité alimentaire, entre guillemets, elle est assez fragile parce qu'elle est généralement basée sur, d'ailleurs, une acception assez compliquée à revoir du consensus de Washington, qui est la sécurité alimentaire, puisque nous importons beaucoup d'intrants. Donc, nous avons monté une expérience depuis les années 2006, novatrice au niveau de la démarche, au niveau de la renforcement de capacité avec des groupes de producteurs mis en réseau avec des instituts de recherche et des institutions publiques, mais aussi mis en réseau au niveau régional, Maroc, Tunisie, Algérie. Ensuite, nous avons poussé vers un changement d'échelle. Et ce changement d'échelle par rapport à ce qu'avait dit le président de l'ACT, c'est bien que qu'il y ait de la bonne volonté, mais à un moment, et je finirai là-dessus probablement, le changement d'échelle doit venir probablement, ou la conviction doit venir des producteurs, mais à un moment, ça doit être accompagné par les politiques publiques. Or, je le dis très franchement, il y a deux choses qui me font très mal, pas moi tout seul. Nous vivons d'abord dans une sorte de schizophrénie. J'assiste à des réunions de toutes sortes du monde dans le monde, à Amman, en Tunisie, à Rome, ailleurs, sur la rareté de l'eau, sur l'effritement des terres, sur l'érosion, etc. Mais lorsque on en vient aux actes, on voit que c'est toujours business as usual. C'est-à-dire qu'on est toujours dans un modèle de libre-échangisme triomphant, comme si l'expérience douloureuse de la crise de 2007-2008 n'était pas passée par là, qui a mis des gens dans la rue et qui a montré à quel point le libre-échangisme ne pouvait pas être une solution, mais qu'il fallait changer de gouvernance, avoir un petit peu plus de responsabilité chez les producteurs et retrouver des politiques publiques beaucoup plus innovantes et beaucoup plus volontaristes.
So voilà. Ben, you can now conclude. Eh?
C'est tout. Merci.
Okay, we are being pressed with time, but you have to cover everything that you're supposed to do. Now we are moving on. As I was introduced to you, I'm working for FAO Somalia. That's the heartbeat of drought. So when you see me here, you see I'm coming from quite a drought-prone area. So when we are discussing this, they are really reflecting on what we are doing on the ground. Now, at this point now, I'd like us to agree on 3 terms or 3 issues. First one is the technology to address drought is there. Everybody says it's there. It is somewhere there. The challenge is, why doesn't the farmer get this technology? Another fact that we know is that the farmers need this technology. They are in demand in where they are doing their work in terms of farming. So this panel now will take us deep into the discussion on this issue. And I will guide them with the questions so that we are able to really go into the details of what can we do to enhance technology transfer to the farmers so that they are able to enhance their capacity to withstand the negative impact of drought and to build up their livelihood in a resilient way. So at this point, I'm going to ask the first question to Dr. Andrade. Yeah? Tell us, how can we connect farmers to advances in research and technology to help in fighting and enhance resilience against drought? Because these technologies are there. But how can you enhance the ability of the farmers to be able to access these technologies and apply in their farming system? Thank you.
But perhaps before you answer, we could also take some questions from the floor because we are pressed for time.
The audience, you can take note of the questions. There'll be a session of 20 minutes for you to ask or contribute. So, Dr. Andrade?
So we wonder why the farmers are not getting technology. From where I'm coming from, most of our farmers have only, with me at most, 4 years of scholarity. Usually, the people already talk here about extension service. In a country of the size, for example, of Mozambique, where you have 1,000 extension agents, how are you going to bring this technology to the farmers that are they have very low education without using extension agent? But we have an excellent case of Ethiopia, who has over almost 40,000 extension agents. So we need, for sure, to have a good local connection, good research at local level. We need to empower, educate our farmers. And also, we need to also create some kind of incentive, or some of his incentive. This is what I think right now.
Thank you for your response. And actually, it's true that the technology is not being absorbed because of the capacities. The capacities are very low, and the government extension services seem to be dwindling, and the private sector is not picking up. So that's a good observation, Dr. Andrade. Now, the next question I would like to direct to Benbecha. The private sectors in the developing world is really doing well in terms of technology transfer. In fact, most of the technology transfer in the developed world is more through private sector. Why isn't this working in developing world? Why aren't we having active participation of the private sector in the developing world in terms of enhancing technology transfer to the farmers? Ben?
Oui, mais je serais peut-être plus nuancé. Il y a d'abord le secteur privé, ça dépend de quelle région du monde en développement on parle. Il y a des pays où l'économie en général et l'agriculture en particulier étaient étatisées. Donc le recul de l'État pour des raisons notamment financières ou de crise financière n'a pas été rapidement relayé par le secteur privé. Mais je peux dire que dans beaucoup de pays que je connais, le Liban, le Maroc, la Tunisie, l'Égypte, qui sont assez différents structurellement, il y a une intervention du secteur privé. C'est une question peut-être d'habitude, mais ce qu'il faut ce qui est notre demande d'agriculteurs, c'est non pas passer du tout État au tout privé, parce qu'il y a évidemment, ils vont pas faire de la charité, il peut y avoir aussi des faux conseils. Il faut qu'il y ait une professionnalisation du conseil, et c'est ce que nous devons apprendre à faire, c'est-à-dire qu'il y ait des structures où il y ait un mix, je dirais, de public, de privé, parce que ça me fait des fois rire. J'ai eu même une fois un petit souci avec la FAO sur la notion de private sector, parce que nous-mêmes, nous sommes du private sector agriculteur, nous ne sommes pas du public. Mais quand moi, qui ai 10 hectares, je travaille avec Monsanto, évidemment, ou avec Nestlé, ou avec Cargill, évidemment, le rapport est très asymétrique. Donc l'essentiel, c'est nous apprenions à nous respecter, parce qu'il y a autant de bonnes idées chez les agriculteurs, même quand ils ont un bac -4. Parce qu'il y a de l'empirisme aussi. C'est apprendre à se connaître, moins se mépriser, si je puis exprimer un mot assez dur. Et l'expérience est un peu en route là-dessus, parce que finalement, il y va de l'intérêt des uns et des autres.
Yeah, it's true. We need the private sector involvement for us to succeed. For the technology transfer to be sustainable, it has to have incentive. And for it to have incentive, you have to bring in the private sector. So it is very crucial that the private sector is actively involved in the technology transfer. Now, at this point, because we are running really behind the schedule, I'd like now to open the questions to the floor. The floor can ask questions so that we can be able to have your input to this particular discussion. And you can just raise up your hands, then you are given the microphone to be able to ask questions or comment. Somebody there? Yes, that one?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. Well, my name is Asmorom Kirane from Eritrea. Well, definitely the technology is there. For example, to have a drought-resistant hybrid maize or wheat is also a technology. But farmers, they don't have access for that. What could be the solution for that? Maybe that one goes primarily to Miss Kate, which she did very nice presentation. And on top of that, I would like also to reiterate about what could be the role of the plant genetic resource property rights. Yeah, the role of property rights of plant genetic resource treaty. Do you think they have any role so that farmers have an access all the time sustainably to that hybrid crops? Thank you.
Yeah, we'll take another question. And then after that, we respond to them together. Yes, there's one in front here.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Deep Awais. It's a comment and a question. We talk about famine associated with drought. Well, I understand drought can hit agriculture, can hit some countries, but to have a famine associated with drought, I think this is big shame on the international community, big shame on governments, big shame on everybody that famine is associated with drought at this time of the development in the world, where there are surpluses everywhere, and the problems is not lack of food. The problem is governance and different things. However, it is good to have a question of the private sector and the government. So how you define the responsibility of governments on drought response and famine in countries where there are drought? We put the blame always on the farmer. The farmer is not adopting. We have a lot of technologies, but the farmer is not adopting. It's not the problem of the farmer, frankly speaking. It's the problem of all of us, especially the governance in countries and internationally. How can the international community still in this 21st century allow that famine happens where there is drought? This is a question of international dimension. Is there a drought response fund that comes and help in cases where things happen in Africa or in Africa. I think we are trying to avoid the real responsibilities here. We are putting the blame in the wrong place. What do you think of that?
I can see this is quite a heated topic, and the time left is so little, but it is true. What you're saying is that we need to have clear responsibilities of the different stakeholders, the government, the private sector, whoever is involved in this particular issue. But it seems the efforts have been disjointed, and some stakeholders are not taking their responsibility seriously, and therefore that's why maybe you're having this persistent negative impact of drought year in, year out. Now, coming to the issue of the farmers, the seeds being there, but the farmers are not having them. Can we blame intellectual property rights regimes as one of the responsible factors preventing farmers from accessing technology packaged in seed? Chair, can we have maybe 3 minutes so that we can get a response from CIMIT? Just that as the last one, so that we can move on.
Just again, quickly, yes, the seed is there. Why are the farmers not taking up? We did an extensive survey at the end of 2015 in our 6 countries to find out. An expensive traditional paper survey, which I'm trying to get more and more to digital. It's another thing in agriculture. Real-time data is critical. We have cell phones. We should use them. But what we found was about 17 to 20–25% of farmers were the only ones who had ever heard of a drought-tolerant variety. And even translating drought tolerance into many languages, most farmers kind of think of these as early maturing varieties. And the reasons why are many. Again, Ethiopia has an excellent extension system. Tanzania and Uganda do not. Subsidy programs of the governments, if you speak to our private sector partners, they will go on about how that's disrupting the market. And a lot of the free seed and fertilizer that is going to these farmers, for example, in Zambia and Tanzania, is either fake seed or low-quality seed, and it's free. There's all these things. We also asked farmers in that survey, where do you get your seed? And where do you get your information? And to some, I'm always so slow, I'm so sorry. But in a nutshell, we had to check our assumptions because we were surprised. Many farmers use the informal sector. They get their information from other farmers and from radio, not from seed companies. So we were looking in the wrong place. We were spending money in the wrong place. So we now are trying to engage the informal sector. And even agro dealers and stockists didn't really understand the seed or how to explain it or how to sell it. So in a nutshell, there were many problems. But I would say the answer is you've got to map that out. Where do farmers get their information? Where do they get their seed? And start there.
Thank you very much. And at this point, I would like to thank the panelists, the seminar organizers, and the audience for the active participation in this particular discussion, despite the shortage of time. I believe as we continue interacting in the day, we shall be able to exchange much more. Thank you very much. So I return the floor to the chairman to take us through to the next stage.
Thank you very much. And certainly at the end of the day, when we have the informal drinks, there's a lot of time to exchange informally questions and remarks you have with the panelists and with everybody here present. I now would like, and thanks again to the moderator and the panelists and introducers for this session. Thank you so much. Now, and certainly, sir, one thing is sure, we never can and should blame the farmers for famine or for drought. Because if somebody wants to overcome drought or overcome famine, it are the farmers. But the question, of course, is how do we give them the technology, the access to seed, the access to funding. Now we proceed and we go to our third theme, and it is moving from reactive to proactive management in drought emergencies. And we have 2 showcase presenters. The first one is Mrs. Jyoti Bailappa, of the World Food Programme, and the second one is Mr. Oasis Rubio Guiterres from the National Water Commission of the Government of Mexico. So may I give the floor directly to the first showcase presenter, and that is Mrs. Giuati Bailapa. You have the floor, madam.
Thank you.
And please may I ask you, because of the pressure for time, to be as concise as possible.
Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, I would like to thank FAO and the core organizers for extending the invitation to present the R4 Rural Resilience Initiative at this seminar. It's a pleasure to be here, and I would try and keep to the time limit as suggested. As we have seen so far and discussed and deliberated, one of the key components for proactive drought management is having a risk financing strategy in place, which enables governments and actors at different levels of aggregation to manage drought of different intensities and frequencies through a layered approach. To design such a strategy, it is key that we understand the timing of resource requirement, the cost and benefits of financial instruments, as well as key operational considerations such as the speed of disbursement. So the risk financing landscape is composed of several instruments ranging from traditional ones such as budgetary allocation, for example, to more innovative ones such as forecast-based financing and insurance, more particularly parametric insurance in recent times. WFP has led the way in developing such innovative solutions through the R4 Rural Resilience Initiative, the Africa Risk Capacity Replica, and Food Secure, which have microinsurance, macroinsurance, and forecast-based financing as core components for drought management. However, we do realize that insurance on its own is not effective tool and must be integrated with other interventions such as risk reduction and risk retention to realize its full efficacy. It is with this view in mind that WFP entered into a strategic collaboration with Oxfam America for the R4 Rural Resilience Initiative, which aims at building the resilience of food insecure and vulnerable populations who are exposed to climate risks such as drought. R4 is composed of 4 key components. First, the risk reduction component, which encourages participants to create and rehabilitate risk reduction assets, which primarily target soil and water conservation efforts. The second is transfer of risk through an index-based insurance product, which offers coverage against extensive dry spells as well as droughts. The third is risk reserves or savings, either at household, group, or community levels, so that it offers a buffer against idiosyncratic risks. The fourth and the final is encouraging participants to take risks in a prudent manner. This can either be done through livelihood diversification or access to credit. The key innovation around R4 is its ability to ensure that food insecure and vulnerable households have access to insurance through their efforts on risk reduction activities. Sorry, I'm trying to keep it really short here. So as we have seen, droughts have a major impact on food security levels and livelihood profile of households. R4 ensures that through its first component, which is primarily soil and water conservation activities, the impact of drought is limited. Through timely insurance payouts, R4 ensures that households do not resort to negative coping mechanisms, such as sale of productive assets, and can have a faster recovery from droughts. Through the savings or the risk reserves component, It offers not only a buffer against idiosyncratic shocks, but also as a base for investment in good years. Additionally, in good years, insurance offers farmers the confidence to boost their productivity by taking risks in a prudent manner through access to credit. All four components work together in a holistic manner and reinforce each other to ensure that the food and income security of households and communities is ensured. R4 is currently reaching over 40,000 smallholder farmers in Africa, which across 5 different countries, which include Ethiopia, Senegal, Malawi, Zambia, and Kenya, with plans for expansion in Zimbabwe this year. The key impacts that we have seen so far is maintenance in food security levels, improvement in productivity, investments and savings, as well as women empowerment. So the R4 model is sequenced, is a very context-specific model which takes into account the needs and specificities of communities so that different components can be phased in at appropriate times. For the case of Malawi, for example, we have introduced climate services as well as market linkages when the communities are deemed ready to incorporate these services. Gradually, R4 aims to develop sustainable pathways for food insecure and vulnerable households to move out of safety nets to more productive and sustainable livelihoods. We talked a lot about coordination and linkages amongst different interventions in the drought risk management arena today. And I would like to end this presentation by showing you some of the work that is currently ongoing or we are envisioning in the countries of operation. For example, in Ethiopia, we will be working with ILRI and SAPARM on the livestock index insurance initiative. In Kenya, we are trying to see how we can link contingency funds, which are managed by the National Drought Management Authority, with R4. In Malawi and in Zimbabwe, we are trying to see how we can incorporate forecast-based financing mechanisms within the integrated approach. In Zambia, we work with FAO through their Conservation Agriculture Scale-Up initiative, which is part of the first component or the risk reduction component of R4. In Senegal, through the Savings for Change model of Oxfam America, we try to ensure that the food security and income security of vulnerable households are met in the aftermath of drought. I would like to end my presentation with that, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Madam Bailapa, not only for your strong but also concise message. Thank you so much. Now we turn to Mr. Oasis Rubo-Quiteras, the government of Mexico, and from the Water Board of the government of Mexico. You have the floor, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. In order to shorten the presentation, if you don't mind, I would like to present this in Spanish. Bueno, les voy a presentar el Programa Nacional contra la sequía que el Gobierno de México ha instrumentado con el objeto de reducir los daños producidos por este fenómeno. Los puntos de la presentación son como la lista lo menciona: la introducción al programa, los antecedentes, la transición de un enfoque reactivo a preventivo, la conceptualización, los componentes del programa, la aplicación, los resultados y los trabajos futuros. Bueno, como ustedes podrán ver en el mapa, la ubicación de México se encuentra en las mismas latitudes donde se encuentran ubicados los principales desiertos del planeta. Es decir, por la disposición del flujo climatológico, México debería ser un desierto en sus 2 millones de kilómetros cuadrados de extensión. Sin embargo, el caso de tener dos litorales importantes entre el Océano Pacífico y el Atlántico nos hace susceptibles al impacto de huracanes, lo cual ha salvado a este país de tener un régimen de desierto en su totalidad. Como antecedentes, quisiera exponerles los eventos de sequía más relevantes que ha sostenido el país. En 1994 al 2003, el norte de México, en la vecindad con Estados Unidos de Norteamérica, sufrió una de las sequías más largas registradas. Se tuvieron principalmente problemas en la producción agrícola de uno de los distritos de riego más importantes. En las cuencas tributarias de la ciudad capital de México, el sistema Cutzamala, el cual abastece de agua potable a más de 10 millones de personas y que al mismo tiempo con el consumo de esta agua y la producción de agua residual se riegan otros tantos distritos de riego. También se sufrió una sequía muy relevante entre 2008 a 2010. Bueno, aquí muestro de manera muy breve, tenemos las previsiones que había en octubre del 2008 de cómo iba a evolucionar el sistema de presas del Cutzamala. La regla o el umbral de alarma era el que está en línea punteada roja. Y lo que se tenía previsto era que con una buena probabilidad la evolución de los embalses iba a volver a recuperarse en el término de un año. Sin embargo, tal previsión no ocurrió y la evolución prevista de los embalses seguía hacia abajo. Esto nos obligó a replantearnos los umbrales de prevención en el sistema de embalses del Cutzamala a unos nuevos umbrales que ustedes pueden ver en la línea continua roja, que tiene un valle superior a la línea punteada roja. Por último, en 2011 a 2012 ocurrió una sequía repentina, así le llamaron. Se suscitó posterior al impacto de un ciclón tropical, Alex, en 2010, y a partir de ahí una condición muy seca apareció en la misma región del país que les mostraba hace 3 láminas. Todos estos eventos fueron superados por la incidencia de regímenes de precipitación abundantes, no por una razón de previsión o de preparación previo a eventos de este tipo. Fue por esta razón que en 2013 se planteó el Programa Nacional contra las sequías en México, cuyo principal enfoque es transitar de una forma reactiva de atender las sequías a una manera proactiva de atenderlas. Asimismo, el enfoque fue tratado en cuencas. El Pronacose fue diseñado para atender en 26 regiones del país el diseño de medidas para poder reducir los efectos de la sequía. Sus componentes, tal como lo mostraron el doctor Donald Wilhide y Peter Italas de la Organización Meteorológica Mundial, tiene las tres componentes de monitoreo, evaluación del riesgo y las medidas y atención para reducir estos eventos. Los pasos es el establecimiento de un monitor de sequía que opera desde 1998. Con esta información, los consejos de cuenca en cada una de las regiones puede tomar decisiones y finalmente esas decisiones llevarlas a acciones para reducir los efectos de sequía. Asimismo, hemos diseñado un indicador de vulnerabilidad de 24 términos o factores, tanto en lo económico, lo social, lo ambiental, para dar un enfoque global de dicho indicador. Bueno, en la aplicación del programa, recientemente en Oaxaca, en la parte sureste del país, se detectó una evolución anómala de este fenómeno desde el año pasado y se tomaron una serie de decisiones con el objeto de que cuando se estuviera presentando el pico de la sequía, que eso ocurrió apenas en mayo, los agricultores tuvieran una vulnerabilidad menor. Aunque se hayan tomado las acciones y estos efectos no hayan sido tan fuertes, dos ciclones acaban de incidir ahí en Oaxaca y nos sacaron del problema de la sequía. Sin embargo, aunque estos ciclones hayan sacado a la región del problema, se siguen llevando a cabo las acciones de preparación. Bueno, me voy directamente al trabajo futuro. Tenemos que perfeccionar el monitor de sequía en todas las fases del ciclo hidrológico, asimismo montarle un sistema de alerta temprana. Tenemos que mejorar también el sistema de evaluación de la vulnerabilidad y el riesgo y con ello ir mejorando asimismo todos los 26 programas de mitigación y atención a la sequía. Esto sería todo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much for your showcasing what Mexico is doing on water management and drought prevention. With your introduction now, we approach the interactive part of our session 3. And I would like to invite now as moderator Ahmed Soukri of the Strategic Program on Risk and Resilience Management of the FAO, as well as Johannes Kuhlmann, Director of the Climate and Water Department of the WMO, as well as Mr. Daniel Tsegai, the Drought Program Officer at UNCCD. May I pass the floor now to you, Mr. Soukri.
Thank you. I think we are coming to the crux of the matter. We knew that we have the technology and also the early warning systems and all, but we haven't acted upon them. And I think this is from kind of a reactive to proactive. You know, what are the main issues that were hindering us? We were saying this for the last decades. We have to be proactive, but we never made it. So I think they would, in the interest of time, I would like to introduce and also invite our two panelists, Johannes Kuhlmann from he's a director at the Water and Climate Department of WMO. He is currently leading, actually, the WMO activity in water and climate. His areas of expertise include climate services, the global climate services, water and climate-related applications, forecasting and warning, water management, and UNFCCC-related matters and SDGs. So, Johannes, I will give you the floor so that we have a bit of time for discussion.
Okay, I have also a presentation that I can share with you, and if you want to publish that later, you can do so. It's okay. I'll, for the sake of time, not present all my presentation, but just talk to a couple of points as far as I can remember. So for me, I come from the WMO. The WMO is an organization that is mainly focused on the preparedness and early warning side of a risk management cycle. So for us, we work together with our peer groups, which are national meteorological or hydrological services, in providing data, information systems, outlooks, forecasts, and warnings. And I believe that one of the main reasons why proactive or reactive management is maybe, in my point of view, not the main issue. For me, the main issue is, do we have a closed risk management cycle? And I don't see that, and I think it is mainly because the people who we have heard, we have all the tools and all the knowledge, basically. Maybe in the one or the other area on this planet, we lack precision in terms of the scales if we want to do assessment or forecasting, okay? So over large parts of Africa, our database is scarce, and we can only use remote sense data to do a real assessment. But yet there is information that we can bring to bear to do a full disaster management cycle. Now, the thing is that in many of our own peer group, within our own WMO peer group, the different players at the national level just don't talk to each other. So if I think we have representation from Met and Hydro Services in our organization, and I think around 20% maybe of all our members have services that really work together in the provision of a climate service or a hydroclimate service that is meant to support agricultural production or food security. And in the other cases, there's either the one service who is dysfunctional, or the other one that just collects data, or another one that just takes information from other points but doesn't really know how to tailor it to the local context. And that is a self-critique, but if I look beyond the WMO peer group, it is probably not much better. So for me, one main reason why we are unable to close the management cycle is that we do not have enough joint programming. And joint programming is also not new. It's also not, I don't know, I didn't invent it. It's not something that falls from the sky. But I think we should focus more on that. And there are some mechanisms that I consider to be, that I think will bring benefit. One example is the Global Framework for Climate Services Partner Advisory Committee, where FAO is a partner, WFP is, all the players are partners in this committee, and if we develop that from an advisory committee into a joint programming committee, I think we are good, we're on the right track. It also involves that on both the national but also the regional or the UN level, we need to do more joint programming. So not planning but programming, and by programming I mean we have a commission for agrometrology. The FAO has agromet specialists in their countries, but those different communities are from, in the end, also different ministries, maybe. So our people come from the ministry that is responsible for the Met service, and then FAO peer people come from other ministries. And if we do not try to join those different communities, we will only improve partially some bits in the total disaster management cycle. And of course, The bits that we improve are normally always reactive because that's where politicians gain visibility and importance. It is just not, if I were president, I would maybe also not invest into a proactive early warning system. It just, if there is nothing to early warn within my 4 years in government, I wasted time and resources to do so. So I think that is a main thing that we need to address. So I'm talking maybe about taboos here because it involves political will, but I think if we do not address this, we will only ever be reactive in the end. And my very short 2 other points are we should really improve the outlook system because we have, well, our data gathering system is probably getting to a point where through the combination of in situ data and remote sensing we can deduct valuable information. But the outlook system, we should really work together with the different peer groups to produce outlooks on a scale of impact, on a spatial scale and in a temporal scale that makes sense to the people that we want to address. And it can only work through a network of global things, regional centers, where regional centers of excellence, science centers, crunch down the global models into a regional perspective and then stepwise down to the national interpretation of these things, of these parameters for, say, and in our case from the WMO, that is also related to energy, water, disaster risk reduction, health, but here it is, of course, in the food security context. And the last thing I think is we need to better communicate all these things because not enough people outside our peer group, and I guess here in this room we're all one peer group, know about what we can do. So that is one weak point that I see. Yeah, and I'd stop here and then happily discuss further things later on.
Yes. Thank you, Hannes. This is I think you have succinctly summarized the need for a joint programming and also moving away from piecemeal project-based into an overall programming, not only within specific organizations, but also across government partners, UN NGOs, so that we actually have a platform where everybody knows what we are doing, but also is moving into the scale that we were talking about earlier, both scaling out but also scaling up. I think these are some of the themes that are coming out from this. Without further ado, I will go to Daniel Zagai, who is the program officer in UNCCD. He's responsible actually for the drought and water scarcity portfolio in UNCCD. Before joining UNCCD, he was lead coordinator of the UN Water Initiative on capacity development to support national drought management policies. And of course, before joining UN Water, he served as a senior researcher and lecturer at the University of Bonn. I would like to actually welcome Mr. Zagai. The floor is yours.
Thank you for this kind introduction, Mr. Shukri. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think we have been discussing about drought, and we know why we are all here. So I will not definitely waste time to talk about why and what. I will just discuss a bit, and how is the most important thing. So the question of what, especially what we do at the UNCCD, there are 3 key pillars that we are working, and I think almost every speaker has mentioned these 3 pillars. One is drought monitoring and early warning systems. Being proactive means being prepared. That is a comprehensive drought early warning systems. It goes beyond meteorology, it goes beyond forecasting. It is about analyzing the risk. It is about trying to disseminate and communicate the information also to all stakeholders at all levels. Trying to be able to communicate to policymakers, to ministers, to farmers, civil society. We need a kind of a new and very much innovative communication strategy. And the other component of the early warning systems is how to respond to early warning. Not to drought, but to warning. If we know about this information about drought that is coming, but we don't have the solution, if we just try to inform probably 3 months ahead the farmers, but they don't know what they are going to do about it, then this information is useless. So are they going to probably do some kind of cultivation ahead, or probably some kind of crop insurance or livestock selling? So we need to come up with a strategy. So there are components that we need to go beyond this seasonal forecasting, and we do also something like on vulnerability and risk assessment. Who is going to be at risk and why, in terms of population, in terms of regions also. And the other thing is drought risk mitigation measures, trying to do something on the ground. So these are the 3 key pillars that we work on. But what are the enabling factors to do this? One is policy. We have been talking about national drought policy based on the principles of risk reduction. I'm glad to hear Professor Wilhite talking about 17 countries now have a drought policy, or at least they are on the way. I keep telling people that it's only 2 countries now, but we have a new survey, and now I think countries are coming up with a national drought policy, which is a good step in the right direction. But also the other thing is political will and commitment. Economic preparedness, economics of drought preparedness. This is hindering countries not to become proactive. Intersectoral coordination. I very much agree with what Johannes said. Trying to really put together the intersectors. The sectors are not working together. Drought is not about a sector. It's just it's a relevant factor. And we always talk about drought-relevant sectors, which are agriculture, meteorology, environment. These have to go beyond them. Finance ministry has to be involved about drought issues, health. So I think we need to really think about coming up with a national task force on drought issues. So I think going beyond this, the usual suspects ministries which are talking about drought, we should go beyond this. And the investment is also the elephant in the room. Who is going to invest on this? I have seen one question that, do we have the financial resources to become proactive? My answer is yes. I can give you a good example about Ethiopia. $800 million was invested by the government of Ethiopia in order to respond to drought in the 2016 drought. They just import crops from countries like Kenya. These $800 million could have been invested wisely way ahead before the drought has struck. So I think it's not about the financial resource, it's not about the technology, it's about the political will. The other thing is reducing the underlying factors for risk reduction, drought risk reduction. Like we need to really, drought is not affecting everyone equally, women, youth, and there are some underlying factors. I think my fellow Eritrean was talking about peace, conflict. There is some kind of issues that we really have to address before we talk about drought preparedness. So the key message is we need to go beyond mainstreaming drought. We need to work about drought as an institution. Every sector talks about drought, but it's just at the goodwill of the sectors. But we need to enforce. That means we have to have an institution which is accountable and authoritative to work on drought. This is a good case. For example, the US had issued a presidential memorandum in 2016 just overseeing drought issues all over the ministry. It's under the president, so there is some kind of authority also in there. Coming back to the UNCCD, the UNCCD now we have a kind of a priority area on drought. Drought is going to be one of the key priorities for the next few years, and it's also going to be in our new strategy until 2030. And we are working on policy frameworks, technical guidelines, and we have some pilot projects. I'm happy to also announce that Namibia is one of our pilot countries, Colombia and also Nigeria. And we are working with these countries, and we are also working with regional conferences, African Drought Conference. We were co-hosting with Namibia, and we are going to do the same for Latin America and the Caribbean in August 2017. And I'm glad to also announce that WMO and the FAO will also be working with us on this conference. And we will build up on this, at least to come up with some issues. So we have learned a lesson from the African Drought Conference in terms of the important inputs that we got. Africa is now moving with a strategic framework for the whole Africa, drought resilient and prepared Africa, which is called DRAPA. And there will be a Africa-wide network on drought early warning system. At least that is in the declaration. And it's going to be discussed in the AU summit, I think, towards the end of June or July. I don't know exactly the dates. So as a continent, it is moving, and I'm sure we will also hear more from the other regions. I think that will be the end of my intervention. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think with that, to just conclude, I think there are quite a good supporting each other in the interventions. So we're coming now, we may have drought policies, some do not, some do, but the policies need commitments and enabling environment. It had to have intersectoral coordination beyond the ones that we normally, I think of, and of course the finance and others, and risk reduction measures need to be part and parcel of all these. I think in the last couple of years there was a big move overall. FAO, the Director General, actually has opened in 2016 what we call early action window. This is a specific amount of money or resource that is set aside and earmarked so that we actually act upon a specific early warning, so that we are preemptive to coordinate with governments and with partners what to do and what needs to be done. And I think these are some of the things that are being taken globally, and FAO has already set up in its special fund for emergency. So this now, I think before we conclude, maybe I'll give a couple of questions directly from our participants, and make it short, to the point, so that we have actually responses to them. I see one hand there, a couple, maybe three. So all three, there is one.
Thank you very much. All have really presented, in a very good manner. And I just have, some minor questions. In the case of these, the drought pillars, the vulnerability, who is at risk? What is the use of identifying that? As long as, if there is a problem occurring, the whole population is at risk, isn't it? So what's the advantage that we just say that vulnerable group is either the farmer or anything else? Because if there is no crop production, if there is no yield at all, then the whole population is going to be affected. So how do we really see? I'm just trying to say, why not we really bring the pillars from 3 to 2? One is that. And the other thing, my friend Daniel just said, in the case of the Ethiopian condition, that it spent about $800 million to really save lives. Just even before that, in the cases of just trying to mitigate the drought problem, you cannot really avoid it. Doing whatever you can, be it the Ethiopian government or other international, organizations working together with the Ethiopian government. Drought is sometimes, like in the case of El Nino, where you cannot avoid it. So just spending these $800 million is saving life. That's a political will. Why not we really see in terms of that? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Just have one short question. And a lot has been said about early warnings, which is so important. But I was wondering, can we be advised on especially who is the real target? To whom should the message of early warning go? And secondly, how do we do it? Are there ways to send these messages so that they reach the farmers or all the target groups on time? Because what I've observed is sometimes the early warning messages are prepared, but they don't even reach some of the target groups, whereas they're already in risk. So I just want more advice on that.
One last one there.
Hello. Marlos de Souza from the Land and Water Division here at FAO. Daniel was talking about two countries before with policies in place, and one is Australia. And our experience in Australia, when you get the millennium drought in Australia from 1997 to 2009, showed a lot of things to the government of Australia since that time that we had a strong policy in place. But still, you go through the experience in Australia, they're going to show you that still a strong economy in a developed country can struggle how to deal with managing drought properly. So one thing that my first mission here at FAO was to go to Africa for a workshop there. And when I showed the experience of Australia, they asked me, who declares drought? So in Australia, it's the Bureau of Meteorology. It's science-based, it's not the government. The government has to trigger a number of actions after the Bureau of Meteorology has declared drought. So if you go to a number of countries, they don't have it. Some governments, they don't trigger it because they know that there is an economic consequence of triggering something as drought in place. So my question, I think, is 2 points that we struggled in the past in Australia, but we were able to fix it. One is, as Johannes said before, is monitoring. You know, it's for you to know when it's going to come. Australia is a country that knows that drought is going to come at certain times. So monitoring is important with risk, where it's going to impact from historical data. I think the second one is that, you know, how the government is going around that, the structure you have, who declares drought. The finance minister has to be there because a lot of money has to go through this process to prepare those guys to be resilient, the farmers. The third one gets to the farmers. If you look at that picture there with the woman digging on that dried soil, so I'll ask you how the message is going to get to that person. In Australia, we have high-speed internet for those guys, but in Africa, we don't. How can we translate this experience from Australia and other countries, you know, into the day of life of Africa, Latin America, and some other countries? We do have the experience, but how FAO, like ourselves together with WMO and other players, how can we translate it into the necessities of those that they need?
Thank you very much. I think the issue of communication is coming back, and how do we communicate, at what level, including the community and the farmer, and in what language. I think in the interest of time, we shouldn't answer all the questions, but you can maybe choose some of the questions so that we close. Yeah, I will give you the floor.
En términos del sistema de alerta temprana para sequía, yo contestaría con otra pregunta. En la presentación de Yoti Vilapa, ella presentaba el financiamiento del riesgo y que tiene distintos plazos. Y los sistemas de alerta temprana en México, por ejemplo, solamente nos pueden dar una visión a 3 o 6 meses en el futuro. Tenemos dos problemas. Uno, ¿qué tan en el futuro podemos ver el fenómeno de la sequía? Y el tiempo en el que tomamos las decisiones de la producción agrícola. En México las decisiones se toman entre octubre y noviembre. Y ya cuando se compró la semilla, adquirieron créditos los productores, ya no se le puede dar para atrás a la decisión. Tenemos que terminar de sembrar, crecer y cosechar. Y entonces esta articulación entre el financiamiento del riesgo y los sistemas de alerta temprana es algo que tiene que perfeccionarse. Sería mi comentario.
Yeah, thank you, and concise. Maybe Johannes, you would
I would respond to the question on, do we need a vulnerability assessment? And I would very clearly say yes, we need it, because and you are right that everybody is important and that everybody is equally important, not dependent on skin color or income. But I think we need vulnerability assessments to put really the right protection and response measures into place, because if we look at the drought or different droughts, probably groundwater, agriculture, water supply, water storage, they're affected in different ways by different stages of droughts, by different drought types, by different regimes that we are using our water resources. So having a frame of vulnerability gives you a better idea where you are in terms of your impact space of a drought, and improves just your possibility to have a more robust system overall, preparedness and response. So I think it's absolutely needed. And the other thing I can respond to is the target for the early warnings. I think we need to distinguish also, and early warning wise, between different target groups. The one assumption that we always have is that we publish a drought monitor, or we publish something on the internet, or we do a radio transmission, and then everybody who should be responsible picks that up and do something. It's just we throw information over the fence, and normally it wouldn't get to the right people. So we really need to distinguish between information that's needed for an administration or for an organization, or information that is really targeted at the person. And for both things, I believe we have technological ways, and we just need to be more clear in the definition which information goes where, and to then have some campaigns to inform those people on how to really pick that information. It's not to throw it at people and think, okay, they'll do it, but they need to be aware that they need to get it to do something.
Thank you. Just Daniel, briefly.
Just want to reiterate what Johannes said actually on this vulnerability assessment. I think it is the most important pillar, even I would say, because we are not talking about avoiding drought. We are talking about avoiding the drought vulnerability. If there was no vulnerability, if people were able to cope with drought, then we don't need to talk about drought, because drought is going to be more frequent and intense. Australia is going to also face more severe droughts, but people are able to cope, or the government at least. So we are talking about reducing the risk. Ethiopia is a good example in this case. For example, they have a drought risk profile for the country. They are working on it, and we can already see that you can map, if there is drought, where are the intervention areas? Who is going to be affected? Because if you are able to cope, not all are equally affected. All will be affected, but not equally. So you need to really know about this mapping. And you are talking about $800 million invested after the drought has stricken, where we are talking about investing it before, on water harvesting, for example, on crop insurance. Then you could definitely mitigate the impacts. But it's not about saving lives. We should not definitely talk about drought and synonymous to farming. We should really work on it before. I think I like the verse what Donald Wilhite uses: before drought is after drought, and after drought is before drought. So we don't need to really hear about the news of drought to work on drought. That's the message of the day, probably. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, I think please join me to thank the panelists for this very interesting and actually thought-provoking ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Now we come to our last thematic session of this seminar. And I propose and I wish to discuss now how we can mainstream drought management in the context of Agenda 2030, as well as in the context of the implementation of the Paris Agreement. And I would like to invite our two showcase presenters, Mr. Johannes Hunning, presenting the Drought Monitoring and Impact Assessment Toolbox for Vietnam, as well as Ms. Katerina Ogola, introducing management drought in Kenya through international interagency cooperation. And again, I hope that the presenters can be strong in their presentation, but also concise. So may I give the floor to Mr. Johannes Hunning.
Okay, I'm Johannes Hunning, working for FutureWater. It's a small Spanish and Dutch research and consultancy organization. It was already on green, so yeah, do you hear me?
Hello.
No?
Hi, how are you? I'm good. Yes.
Yeah. No? Yeah, you can hear me? Okay. So, repeat, I'm Johannes Hunning, I'm working for FutureWater, a small research and consultancy organization based in Spain and in the Netherlands. We do
a lot of water resources assessments, vulnerability assessments, and drought information systems for working with local governments and water managers. And I was asked to present a bit of work that we did in Vietnam with the local governments over there. And this work was triggered by an event, a drought event in 2009-2010 with quite a huge impact. They have major issues with salinity intrusion in the Mekong River Delta and also in the Red River. And within the drought management program of the Mekong River Commission, we carried out this project on drought monitoring and risk assessment. So we built this toolbox, which actually includes these 4 phases of drought that have been mentioned before. Meteorological drought, the degree of dryness in terms of rainfall, agricultural drought, hydrological drought, and socio-economic drought. And for all these 4 phases, we use a number of indicators based on remote sensing, models and so on that quantify the level of drought. It's a generalized framework, local refinements together with the local stakeholders and different sectors are always necessary. So we did this for the greater Mekong area. That was when we started developing this framework. And to give you just a few examples of what this looked like, we worked at, you used precipitation anomalies using remote sensing, standardized precipitation index, and this was visualized in a web system. Agricultural drought indices based on also on remote sensing, soil moisture deficit. And then another focus was hydrological drought indices, in which we looked at, based on observations on changes in river discharge, reservoir storage and groundwater levels. And then based on this particular component of the project, there was a follow-up in Vietnam, but then focusing on the Red River Basin, in which we actually implemented a real-time early warning system that included models and actually monitored the droughts in real time, but focusing mainly on flows, on the hydrological drought, not on the other 3 components of drought. And then the 4th component for this Mekong River Basin was the socioeconomic drought, or drought risk, which is, as you know, the combination of vulnerability and hazard, which we assessed using different types of data sets, which are summarized here shortly. And in the next slide you can see how that goes out, multiplying this vulnerability times hazard gives you then a risk. The current status of the system, well, it was moved from one ministry to the other, which can be good or can be bad. In this case, it's not really clear what it was actually. The focus in any case was more now on blue water, so on the water actually managed in the reservoir, sometimes called blue water. Not so much on green water, so on agricultural drought. There was a recent very severe event in 2016 with more or less a timely response. But still a major impact, even a higher impact than in 2009-2010. So did we do better? Well, that's still to be seen, and I think it's very important. This is one of my recommendations, to do a post-event drought evaluations. Okay, now we had this event, major event in 2016. What did we do good and what did we do wrong, right? That's lessons learned. That's the first step to take. And then also more focus on agricultural drought monitoring, which is not yet the case, including salinity aspects. Right now we have a drought monitoring system in Spain, real-time early warning system, with some screenshots here that we are developing. And then the last 2 recommendations are just related to closing this drought management cycle that was mentioned before by Johannes Kuhlmann of the WMO, which is still to be done here in Vietnam, closing this management cycle. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Johannes Hunnik. And now it's my pleasure to give the floor to Ms. Katerina Ogola, introducing management drought in Kenya through interagency cooperation. I'm looking forward to your presentation, hopefully strong and concise.
I thank the organizers for inviting me to present on our experience managing drought in Kenya through interagency cooperation. It is against this background, which you all know, that the Kenya INGOs came together to have a collaborative action to respond to drought in Kenya. The worst affected areas were in northern Kenya, northwestern, and northeastern. 23 counties out of 47 counties were affected. It was only in February that the President of Kenya was able to declare drought a national emergency. Who was affected? Basically, that is the summary. All social groups, all livelihood groups, and most severely women, children, and the elderly. Those are the figures. The interagency collaborative action was mainly in 12 of the 23 counties. The impacts have been discussed, and I will not repeat, but it is against that background that the interagency cooperation was hinging on to ensure an effective drought response. Livelihoods of people living in the ASAL areas were severely affected. Livestock was lost, human lives were lost, and we found it quite painful. The interagency collaboration was led by CAFOD, and this initiative was supported by the START network, which is a DFID funded funding mechanism. And 23 organizations came together in Kenya. The main aim was to ensure that we have a proper analysis of the needs, and we come up with proposals for early actions. And in addition to that, was to identify the gaps that were there that the humanitarian actors would fill in. Out of the 23 organizations, 12 technical staff came together and carried out the assessment, which included scenario building and physical visits to some of the severely affected counties, with the aim of not just providing the information, but also coming up with a media strategy and also human stories that would be shared with donors and the government to fully understand the situation on the ground. This was also to inform a joint intervention plan for the 23 NGOs working in Kenya. That summarizes the gaps that were identified by the agencies as a joint effort. And this also informed the joint plan for a response, which included a funding strategy. The benefits, we all found it quite beneficial to work jointly as interagency cooperation. Importantly was the effectiveness of the analysis by 23 organizations just over a month. and one single contract with the START network with CAFOD, but all the organizations were well represented, and this reduced the transaction costs. More localized decision making, and this was quite fast, and this was informed by the local experiences. There was better coordination, less duplication, and also less competition amongst the INGOs. We covered a wider geographical area within a short time and a more collaborative effort. There was enough information for fundraising, both at the agency level and at individual organizational level. Huge learning and complementary opportunities, particularly skills and competencies that were brought on board by the various agencies. We got the information and evidence for policy and advocacy engagement with the donors in country. This is an opportunity that had not happened before. And also we were able to profile the Kenya drought and INGOs at the Kenyan level and also in the north. What didn't work well for us mainly was the time constraint and the resource constraint. Issues of policy have already been mentioned by the high-level speakers and other speakers. There's lack of disaster management policy in country. During the assessment, we received very scanty information, particularly from the national government and the county government. This brings into fore the issue of political commitment. There are competing needs due to other humanitarian crises in the region. For example, the crisis in South Sudan, there is the Somalia, Ethiopia, Uganda refugees, Yemen, and others. And therefore, despite our detailed, comprehensive assessment identifying the gaps, Kenya attracted less funding in comparison to the needs on the ground. Just a quick example is the flash appeal. Amongst all the 4 countries, Kenya only received 24% of the targeted amount. Insecurity was also an issue, accessing the populations. And the Kenya 2017 elections, that was another impediment. A good example, January and February 2017 is the period when we were at the peak of mass voter registration. Priority was not drought, political commitment. That was also compromised by the fall armyworms, and this has immensely reduced harvest in 2017 as the crops were destroyed. What needs to happen now? Again, just to reiterate what has been already discussed by my predecessors, a strengthened coordination mechanism that is quite critical and a big learning for the Kenya INGOs. Institutional capacity at national and community levels. This also has been discussed. Policy development and implementation. Some of our policies exist. Implementation is the issue. And finally, to prioritize longer-term responses through investing differently to address underlying causes of vulnerability to drought, resilience. And finally, what are the priorities for the future? From where I sit, channel more funds for drought management in Kenya. Kenya is a middle-income country, but this does not reflect in these 23 counties that we are talking about. Also, localization of drought. Let the national NGOs take responsibility of drought. Let us shift the power to the local communities and local organizations to run the show. the interagency coordination and response was a milestone and continues to be. Apart from just the assessment, we went ahead as a joint collaborative action to carry out an assessment on nutrition in one of the counties, and this has also been shared with the donors, and we continue to build momentum in our engagement with the donors and the government of Kenya, and working jointly to ensure that we address issues. The Kenya government finally has got the initiative on ending drought emergencies by 2020. We strongly feel this is an initiative to be supported. And so with that, I want to thank you, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. To discuss our last topic, not only amongst ourselves, but also with you, the audience, I invite now, as moderator, Mr. Maria Shitima from IFAD, as well as Mr. Ronald Jackson, Executive Director of the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, and Mr. Michael Bruntrop from the German Development Institute as our keynote speakers. Because we have three, I really would like to ask you to do your introductory remarks in a pitch so that we have some time for the audience as well, and we have to only have 15 minutes for this. So please, the introductory remarks via a pitch so that we have some time for the audience.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. I'm happy to say I don't have any introductory remarks, but mine is to introduce Mr. Ronald Hugh Jackson, Executive Director of the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Program, to give us his pitch. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. First, let me thank FAO and the co-organizers for the opportunity to share some reflections on the topic from the Caribbean perspective. Mindful of time, let me just quickly give us context. The Caribbean is a mix of SIDS and low-lying coastal states with narrow economic base, still high dependence on the agricultural sector, high debt to GDP ratio, increasing vulnerabilities, growing multidimensional poverty, and persistent low growth. It is against this backdrop that the solutions towards resilient agriculture in the region must be examined going forward. The Caribbean has 7 of the world's top 36 water-stressed countries, though not experiencing the challenges we've seen in Africa and the Horn of Africa, etc. And the agricultural sector currently employs 15 to 20% of the workforce in the Caribbean. Hence, agriculture is important for the livelihoods of the rural poor. Within the Caribbean context, the agriculture sector disaster risk reduction, and with it, the cross-cutting issue of climate change, is one of the success stories in promoting an interagency approach and an integrated approach to dealing with risk. In reflecting on the topic of the panel, we should note that the SDGs at its core seeks to reduce poverty and efforts to achieve sustainable development through its 3 dimensions, social, economic, and environmental. And one of the first messages is a consideration, therefore, that in delivering this, the SDGs should consider risk at its core as a potential for derailing these efforts. In that regard, building resilience against the risk of the drought hazard must be with a focus on water resources and land management. It is also notable that the SDGs currently has 8 goals where water and land is either central or cross-cutting, and it seeks to advance within that context the whole of society approach in achieving this success. A focus on effectively delivering on these and the broader sustainable development goals would result in the establishment of the fundamentals upon which the agriculture sector risk or development resilience must be anchored. Conversely, climate and weather extremes will threaten efforts to attain the targets of these goals. Hence, a requirement for an integrated risk consideration across all the sectors of all the goals of the SDGs. The current context presents opportunities for harmonizing the efforts of the complementary global and regional agendas promoting development resilience. Here I'm talking about the SDGs, the Paris Agreement, the Sendai Framework, all of which seek to address similar issues in delivering resilience. Consideration should be given to the effective harmonization of the goals, targets, and indicators under these frameworks at the national level in particular to allow for better effectiveness in the coordination of policy and implementation efforts and the maximization of limited resources, in particular human and financial. One of the controversial positions that I would want to put on the table, and even in my own practice, is perhaps we should be looking at these issues within the context of one larger framework, one larger agenda, which is the SDGs, with the climate change agenda and the disaster risk reduction agenda seen as cross-cutting themes in ensuring the broader SDG agenda. This is the approach we've taken within the Caribbean context to some degree, where we've promoted a broader governance arrangement that seeks to harmonize the various multi-sector entities operating in that space, and which we've been able to take advantage of the opportunities coming out of innovation and forecasting in technology solutions to strengthen policy, strategic and implementation arrangements regionally. In closing, I think the main challenge here is the limited national budgets that are available to sustain and advance practical and technological solutions, as well as to support effective reduction in risk and drought response. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, and thank you for keeping up to time there and for sharing with us your Caribbean experience in terms of risk management across the SDGs and the Paris Agreement, and also for focusing on land resource and water management as a key focus areas through an interagency approach to the Caribbean disaster risk management. Thank you very much. I have the pleasure to introduce Michael Bruntrup. Michael is from the German Development Institute. He's a senior researcher at the German Development Institute. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, I will make 3 points. One is highlight some SDGs which are affected by drought. Second one is to highlight some of the policies which we may have not mentioned enough, which can help to combat drought, and then 2 strong statements as requested by the organizers. So first one is on which are the SDGs which are particularly affected by drought. Somebody said 50 indicators may be affected by drought. I think when I was reviewing the SDGs, I think it's maybe even more. One which I didn't know about is indicator SDG 1.5, and that is the key drought resilience indicator. By 2030, build the resilience of the poor and those in vulnerable situations and reduce their exposure and vulnerability to climate-related extreme events and other economic, social and environmental shocks and disasters. It is under SDG 1 and not 2, and that is important also in the consequences which I will present, because drought resilience is maybe more about non-agriculture than agricultural measures. We have talked a lot about SDG 2, so I don't mention that. One interesting indicator is 3.5. It is the first indicator or the first SDG which I have not been able to link with drought, which is drug abuse. So drug abuse, maybe you do consume more drugs if you are unhappy with the situation, but this is the first. One important one is water for drinking water. We have talked a lot about water for agriculture and irrigation and so on, and for livestock, but drinking water must be the first priority. So if we are talking about a priority during droughts for water use, drinking, of course, must be the number one, and there must be something like, somebody mentioned here, a scheduled intervention, which users have priority, and we maybe have not talked enough about priorities. Another SDG that I want to mention here is climate change and its impact. Drought can foster, and I think substantially foster, climate change. We have talked about deforestation, land degradation, large-scale fires, and emergency charcoal production, for example, which is very frequent in Africa. For UNCCD, I think very important is that life on land really brings together drought, which drought as a problem, then drought as a factor for degradation of land and for desertification. SDG 16 on peace, justice, and accountable institutions. Yes, I think some people have mentioned drought can heavily, strongly affect local peace and even have spillover effects to cross-country unpeaceful situations. And finally, SDG 17, I think drought can be a strong connector and an accelerator of linkages and of partnerships. Some of the areas where I think we have not talked enough about what can be done against drought is growth, economic growth and diversification out of agriculture, so to become less dependent on water for agriculture. And that should also, I think, include moderate migration options. We all talk about we want to combat drought to stop migration, but migration is an important contributor to drought resilience, so we shouldn't stop of thinking that we should also support some moderate migration to increase the diversification of household incomes. Also, I think trade, food trade is an important component. If you think about what vulnerable populations do, or what farmers do, they consume maybe, they produce less, and the first thing that they will do is they reduce spending, sales of food. So if we don't have food trade into a region, food prices will go through the sky. If we don't introduce food trade in the good years, we will not have it in the bad years. So we should not strive, for example, for food sovereignty, which means having local food production for local consumption. We need to open food trade in the long run to have buffer for drought periods. And my two concluding remarks are, so one is there is much more than agriculture and water, which has to be included in any drought resilience strategy. And the second thing, and I don't have an answer to that one, is what do we do with fragile states where we do not have good cooperation of government organizations, no donors to really work on the ground. We have to work there in a piece-wide, piecemeal way, mainly with NGOs and local organizations, and I think that is a very big challenge for the international community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. It is always difficult to moderate the last session under stress of time, but they did their very best to bring out the main points. I think the key points that Michael has brought, which were not really covered before, is the role of non-agricultural activities in promoting resilience. And a very controversial statement you have said there, not to strive for local food production, but to promote food trade even during times of plenty. I think that's fairly controversial, and I would like to hear reactions from the floor on that. Can we open this for 5 minutes for a couple of reactions before we close? Do we have another hand going up? We have one so far. Can I have just about 3? The second one over, and the third one over there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. My name is Sergio Zelaya. I work in the CBL division here in FAO. Very nice suggestions and recommendations of the presenters. But can I be a little bit bold here and ask you, what is the one priority for you that institutions like FAO and the other UN organizations in Rome should do? What is, if your mother asks you, what is the one thing you should do in drought as an international organization, what is it? What is that one thing?
Thank you very much. Can we get the second question? We have a lady over there and the gentleman over there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Liliana Mosca. I just want to put on the table 2 more questions. How about urbanization? How can it affect growth and becoming also famine? And the second, we haven't taken consideration the building of dams all over in the world, and particularly in Africa. Thank you very much.
Can you repeat your first question, please?
urbanization. Africa will be already as more than 50 city with many millions, and also urbanization can be at the root of famine and drought.
Thank you. Third question, and then we get responses.
Good afternoon. My name is Lorenzo De Simone. I'd like to address my question to Mr. Johannes Huning, who presented the Drought Monitoring and Impact Assessment Toolbox for Vietnam. My question is, as we are talking about the importance of predicting to be proactive and more than just active, I wanted to ask you what's your opinion on the uptake of machine learning and artificial intelligence coupled with the big data for remote sensing to improve resolution and accuracy of drought prediction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we get responses? I'll just give you gentlemen a chance to respond. I think don't respond to everything, just pick up one and we'll just go take in turn. Johannes first.
Well, then I'll start with the last question because I directed to me. Indeed, seasonal drought prediction is getting it's over the last years it's getting quite popular and a lot of advancements, especially seasonal prediction using teleconnection indices and all types of these type of statistically based approaches. Machine learning is getting more attention and seems to be promising. So far mainly used for, again, the blue water, mainly for the water stored, the river flows, but also we're doing a project right now also related to agricultural impact, so soil moisture, and so there is future over there.
Thank you very much, Catherine.
Proactively support and strengthen coordination mechanisms at all levels.
I take it you are responding to the question on what the international organizations can do. Proactively support and strengthen coordination at all levels.
I'm going to touch the question from FAO. It's difficult to say, but I'd say continue to focus on your comparative advantage and to advocate for an integrated consideration within the agriculture sector. My experience in the Caribbean is that you're focusing in that way, and it is working, and I would promote the continuation. Moderator, if you permit me, I want to reflect on the question. In our context, the idea of imports is something that we wouldn't subscribe to. We believe that food security in the Caribbean is the ability to feed yourself, not only in terms of purchasing, not in terms of importing. And in our context, I think there is an opportunity for us to focus on the comparative advantage provided by land in land-rich and water-rich states within the CARICOM regional integration framework.
Michael?
Yeah, towards the FAO, I'm not in the detail, I do not know, but what I would say is I see, for example, a lead agency for drought resilience not under FAO, but under UNDP, for example, and FAO would subscribe to be only a partial solution to a holistic drought, the formulation of national holistic drought policies. That would be a consequence of that. As to urbanization, I see them as a chance, indeed. Not the mega cities, but the smaller cities, which you can foster where diversification is taking place. These are the centers of diversification of the economy out of agriculture. And at the same time, they can serve, of course, to demand food from rural areas and to supply also other services and remittances and private investments through the rural area. So I see them more as a chance than as a threat to food security through drought. And the same for dams. Yes, I think dams are necessary, medium, not the very large ones. I think we have to consider, I'm working with people from water and energy, and very often these dams are prioritized for hydroelectric energy and not for water for food production. I think that is a wrong a wrong sequence, but if then we have to allow these countries to use to develop other forms of electric energy, because if they are very dependent on electricity, of course they will use it for electricity generation, and agriculture will be the damaged sector.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael, and thank you all presenters. I think I'll just have a couple of words to say from myself. Being from IFAD, we invest in agriculture, and we have consistently regarded drought and the increased incidence of drought as a big risk to the full spectrum of our investment portfolio. Whether we are talking about investing in rural finance programs or in any livelihood associated programs, drought, water scarcity is a key risk area. And what I've seen today is the real points I take away are risk management, promotion of resilience are fundamental. The ability to monitor, put in place early warning systems, and to integrate these to be able to assess the vulnerability of communities in achieving SDGs early enough and assist them to use this information. And this is where we always struggle when we are doing our investments. How do we get investments in early warning systems to reach the most vulnerable members of rural communities? It is a challenge. It is an area that I feel has not been adequately addressed in this session, and it is really alive and out there and requires more attention. We have spoken a lot on the global elements, on the larger scale elements of monitoring, but not on actually transferring that knowledge to the rural community members. But there is promise from the tools I have seen here today, and we will look forward to actually enjoying the fruits of those work that you are doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, moderator, and all the speakers of this last session. And we are now coming to the closing of our international seminar on drought and agriculture. And before we come to the co-chair's communiqué, as well as the closing speech of the Deputy Director General, Ms. Maria Elena Semedo, I think we should be thankful for this excellent day. And I would express my sincere appreciation for not only this excellent day, but especially for the strong key messages which are given by our speakers, our moderators, and our showcases. They have showed us today what we have to do differently if we want to prepare for drought, to plan for drought, and to overcome for drought. It's clear what we have to do differently. They have given us the message, they have given us the way forward. And I firmly believe that on this day we have contributed to the promotion as well of a larger and highly engaged community that will spare no efforts to advocate for innovative and proactive policies, and hopefully especially actions in drought management, taking into consideration best management and best practices showed today, and also a more efficient path towards drought management, which was also shown today. And these key messages are clearly, we try to take care of these key messages in the co-chair's communiqué. It's not a negotiated document to be formally. What we try to do is the key messages which were given by the presenters, by the showcases, by the work done by FAO, IFAD, and in some cases also WFP. We try to put that in a co-chair's communiqué. And I think throughout the sessions, it's clear there's a strong need and importance of implementing coordinated preventive and mitigating actions as a powerful message towards the drought community, but especially outside of the drought community. Impacts of drought have a global dimension that are likely to affect growing numbers of men and women, and also the youth, due to climate change. That's why increasing resilience of vulnerable groups should be an even more strategic goal for the international community, enforcing and drawing from what is already included in Agenda 2030, as well as the Paris Agreement. But we have to act. We cannot leave this room by only thinking we have had an excellent day. We have now to translate it, as we always say, in the walking into the action. For that, I would like to invite the co-chairs, Mr. Mansour, Mr. Sharid Madar, to the podium. And I would also like to invite to the podium the session moderators for this wrap-up session. And I first would like to call upon Mr. Thaib Owais to give a short presentation of the outcome of his session. Please do it up there. Come on. Not your...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon. The session on integrating and aligning water and soil management strategies to maximize response to drought have acknowledged that water and land management is key to drought management, and that they are basic resources that are at risk and are threatened, especially with climate change and other degradation aspects. The session has identified some challenges. Post-drought responses are common, little in preparedness. Soil water management for drought preparedness is not a priority in the countries still. There is a weak regional coordination and cooperation. There are some suggestions that came out of the session that it calls for a need to increase coordination, cross-sectoral integration, synergies and strong leadership is needed at the national and at the regional levels. There are enough technical solutions, but need more implementation solutions, because that's actually lacking in many places. We need to ensure support for regional and national strategies for drought management. We need to ensure consistent legal, institutional, and technical packages for implementation. We need to support policymakers with effective decision-making tools for planning drought management. Another suggestions came through preparing the coming generation to adapt and take decisions. Innovative thoughts, training programs, and awareness-raising programs are needed for the youth to prepare for drought. And establishing regional knowledge platforms to build cooperation among countries and share current best practices. And finally, exploit innovative financing mechanisms to link soil water storage and carbon soil storage through agricultural development projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wise, for your very significant summary of your session. Now I would like to turn to the moderator of session 2, Mr. Joseph Ahenda, you have the floor, sir. And what we will do, of course, is the summaries given by the moderators will be annexed to the co-chair's communique, which of course will be also on the internet. You have the floor, sir.
For session 2, there was a lot of justice done to this particular subject, despite the limitation of time. And there are key challenges that were identified during the discussion. The first one was the wide gap between research and farmers, limiting access to technology and innovation on the ground. The second challenge that was identified was that the technology was there, but farmers lack the capacity to apply or use them. Yeah. The third one being limited access to information for decision by the farmers. So the discussion observed that there's quite limitation of information, not only technology, but information to the farmers. The fourth one was the limited participation of the private sector in technology transfer, and that the bulk or the little that is being extended to the farmers come through the government or the NGOs, but the private sector, which is supposed to play a leading role, is not taking up that role. The fifth and the last challenge that was captured was the limited access by farmers to improved seeds or improved varieties. And in the discussion, you could remember that there was the issue of IPR issue coming in. Now, the solution that the discussion came up with, the solutions, the first one was provision of incentive to farmers to adopt new technologies so as to increase their resilience and capacity. Yeah. And then the second is the packaging of information in simple form so that farmers can be able to adopt those technologies. Because it appears some of the technologies come in form that the farmers cannot be able to absorb and apply. The third one is development of locally appropriate technologies, like breeding programs. We should have breeding programs that are going to produce varieties that are adaptable to the local conditions. Imported varieties is not doing so well when it comes to the conditions within the developing countries, especially in Africa. The fourth one is to enhance private sector engagement in technology transfer through public-private partnership. And then the fifth one is active involvement of stakeholders is necessary so that every stakeholder must have a collective responsibility towards supporting the smallholder farmers to be able to go over the challenges of changes in agroecologies. Then the last one, the last solution is on the breeding programs, and seed companies need to refocus towards the smallholder farmers to allow access to improved varieties. Yeah, so those were the challenges and the solutions that the discussion came up with. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. And as I said before, this will be annexed to the co-chair's communique. Now I'll turn to the moderator of session number 3, and I would like to call to Mr. Ahmed Shukri to give your keynotes.
Yes, thank you. The session was moving from reactive to proactive management of drought and its consequences. So I think one of the things that in the challenge is starting from the information, that there was a kind of a consensus which led to access to the right type of tools and adequate tools, methodologies and whatever are still lacking in many developing countries. And I think this came out with all the information that we have, the right type of information at the right time, at the right place is still missing. So there is big work. So this is one big challenge that came out. The second that came out is there is no integrated provision of services, whether it is agroclimatic or other related services to tackle drought. That is meant, for instance, agricultural livelihoods in the broader sense. And they're usually very specific and piecemeal. And sometimes actually they may confuse because they have different entry points and different targets. The other point that came out nicely is that there needs to be, and this is the challenge, there is no forecast-based financing. Even when we have a very good early warning, we are not actually acting upon them because the system doesn't allow you, even if you know what needs to be done, the system doesn't allow. So for this, the lack of the forecast-based financing system is lacking, and I think this we need to invest on it. We also lack effective communication, meaning at different levels, who is listening to the farmer in the language that he understands and in the season that actually makes a difference. So these are the main challenges in short. There were several other factors that came out, but these are in short the main points that came out in this session. So what do we do? The solutions are, of course, a joint programming. All of us are running around collecting data from different angles and different sectors. For the people that actually matter, especially when it comes to food insecurity, for them it is a livelihood, whether it is agriculture, whether it is within the agriculture, crop, livestock, whatever, or other people who are, they want their livelihood to be protected. So we need to have that kind of actually framework. We have to come from the livelihood point of view, and that needs a programming in its own right. We need better communication, and this actually repeatedly came out to target the right people. And there has to be ensured the will at all levels, governments, of course, at the foremost, but international community as well. As was discussed earlier, FAO last year has put an early warning, early financing, resources that are meant for early action. And this is a contingency planning. And these kinds of things need to be actually put in place by international agencies, governments, and others. And we need to go beyond simply mainstreaming drought in agencies, but we need to strengthen the enforcement because policies are there, we have been talking about it, and everybody has all these specific things done, and it is shelved. So we need actually a kind of an enforcement mechanism, and this brings accountability, and this needs to be with all the commitments that governments made with the SDGs, with the Paris Agreement, with the Sendai framework. And when you come to regions, there are regional commitments, Malabo Declaration and others, sub-regional, whether it is in Africa, in East Africa, West Africa, there are sub-regional commitments. Governments have signed to these commitments, and these commitments actually work together, and it's up to us to streamline these commitments and make people accountable. So I think with that then, the last one is we have to improve our vulnerability assessments, of course, to make effective interventions, because different types of shocks and different types of vulnerable groups need different responses. So these types of actually assessments need to be put in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, I would like to call Mr. Maria Shitima to give your conclusions of your session.
Thank you very much, Chair. The main challenges that were recorded are the lack of coordination and implementation for drought risk management at all levels. Droughts pose a significant risk for meeting almost all the SDGs, and there is need here to really look at and do a risk assessment of what impact drought will have on each SDG, because we have heard numbers from 17 in the morning, about 50 in the afternoon and more. Governments have limited budgets to sustain and scale up practical solutions, and also for continuous monitoring of drought and drought impacts, and also for monitoring after impacts whenever we do our interventions. Far more than climate and water needs to be included in drought resilient strategies, we need to go beyond just water. We need to look at economic growth, diversification. We need to look at safety nets as other interventions that need to go into the strategy. And also the strategies need to be cross-sectoral rather than just being single sector, agriculture or water. Then we need also to have a focus on fragile states and how SDGs will actually be impacted on by drought in fragile states, especially by mainstreaming drought management where there is no strong institutions. Solutions and best practices. We need to consider harmonization of goals and indicators across the 2030 agenda, and to ensure effectiveness of drought mitigation for those indicators. We need to consider migration in a moderate level as probably a drought mitigation strategy. We should not only look at it in a very negative way. Even at national level, there is some form of migration that happens in cases of drought. We also need to promote diversification of household incomes, not to solely depend on agricultural income, but other incomes that are more resilient to drought. There is actually a future role for innovative technologies. We've seen quite a number of examples for them. We need to actually promote this and scale them down to household levels as much as possible. And we need to proactively support and strengthen coordination. And this is where the Rome-based agencies really can play a significant role in supporting that, starting from themselves to better coordinate interventions, and also to promote that coordination at national and even at regional and local levels. And we need to promote the use of drought risk management as an approach to assist achievement of SDGs as much as possible. We need to talk about drought risk management more and more often. And lastly, we need to pay particular attention to post-event drought evaluations, to learn lessons from interventions that have been done after droughts, from earlier droughts, and the mitigation measures applied so that we improve on the next lot of mitigations that we do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. May I now turn to Mr. Mansour.
Thank you, Ambassador Hoogeveen. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies. For FAO and for the technical division, I'm responsible for the Land and Water division in the Department of Climate, Biodiversity, Land and Water. It was a great pleasure to engage in the organization of this international seminar, triggered by the governments of Iran and Netherlands, to whom we are indeed thankful. And I think it was an enormous learning opportunity for all of us, organizing it and learning from the so many presentations, the 8 showcases, the 4 thematic sessions, the excellent interventions and support we had at the high-level panel. We at the technical division was also overwhelmed with the high-level support received from our senior management. An event that is this magnitude, opened by our Director General and closed by our Deputy Director General, really encouraged the FAO colleagues and the FAO staff, and I thank all the senior management for the support we received for organizing this event together with the countries that trigger it. Most important, I would like to thank all those who respond to our invitation to be with us. If you look at the outcomes in the concept note that has been printed and distributed. There is the co-chairs communique, which will be presented in a minute and summarize the feeling that has been resulting from this event, but also a publication containing a collection of the experiences. Let me explain 1 minute what it will be. It is going to be an e-book that will be hosted in our platform with these 8 showcases under the 4 themes that mark this event. You know, we discussed soil and water management, connecting farmers to technologies, from reactive to a proactive attitude, and mainstreaming drought in the Agenda 2030. Under these 4 main themes, we are going to accommodate the information we generated here that you provided, and the other information that has been reaching us and will reach us in a living book, in a dynamic book. We have 2 big events this year still to come, the COP13 of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, which will be held in China in September, and the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Conference of the Parties that will be held in November in Bonn. We are going to bring to this event the results of the seminar to spread out the work of preparing and preparedness for drought under the theme that we so dearly put in our title, Predict, Plan, Prepare, Stop Drought Becoming Famine. So thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, Your Excellency from Iran, and all the colleagues that have given us the honor to co-host this international seminar. Thank you.
Thank you very much. May I now turn the floor to my colleague of Iran, Mr. Shariat Madar. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. Today is very useful for me. I have received too much information by speakers. I hope the session will be useful for the people who are affected by drought. I want to thank all participants, speakers, country of Netherlands, especially Hans Hugebin, the ambassador of Netherlands, FAO, Mr. De Silva and Mr. Mansour, and the people who are servicing this session, and the members of managers of this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now we come to the co-chairs communique. And of course, I'm not going to read it out, especially for the sake of time as well. And otherwise we don't have interpretation anymore for the Deputy Director General. But as you see, and when you read through the co-chairs communique, you'll see that we try to capture the main elements of the discussion of this morning and this afternoon. And I also would like to acknowledge still the presence of Minister of Agriculture, John Matua, from Namibia, because he showed also this morning and this afternoon with his presence that if you take up this issue at the highest level of the government, you can make a difference. And when you visit his country, you can see with your own eyes that it can work. So thank you again for your presence here. Going again, and when you look to the second page of the communique, you'll see the main messages which we have tried to take up from the sessions. And I said before, the summaries of the moderators of the sessions will be annexed to this co-chairs communique. And I think it is important because it shows what we can do and should do. And I do hope that with this communique, we are only starting our new journey, that we are trying to get a global management plan and a global partnership between governments, international organizations, farmers, private sector, the financial sector, academia, civil society organizations and others for a global investment plan, a global investment, strong global investments in rural and agricultural economies in the affected areas, because we do not do it for ourselves. We do it for those people who today, tomorrow, and days to come are affected by droughts and which can become a famine. And I hope that FAO, IFAD and WFP will lead us in this way, take up the challenge of formulating such a global management plan and starting getting people together behind these investments. And I think with that, we have started today rewriting the drought story by promoting proactive and integrated actions that would and will engage actors within the drought community, but certainly beyond the drought community. I really thank everybody for this enormous, strong message which we have captured today and which we are going to deliver in actions. With that, I really would like to give the floor, it's my pleasure to give the floor to the Deputy Director General, Mrs. Maria Helena Semedo. My dear friends, it's a pleasure to give you the floor.
Thank you. And again, good afternoon to all of you. Excellency Minister of Agriculture, Water and Forestry of Namibia. Minister, a big thank you to you for being here with us today and staying throughout the day, showing how committed is your government, your president. You are representing here His Excellency the President of the Republic of Namibia, and your own commitment in this very important agenda. I would like to thank also the two co-chairs, Ambassador Hugavin from the Kingdom of the Netherlands. He has shown since the beginning his commitment with the former ambassador of Islamic Republic of Iran, here represented by his embassy, showing how committed and interested you are in this agenda of drought. I would also like to thank our high-level guests, our distinguished panelists, you, our participants, and our colleagues from FAO, through Eduardo Mansour, the Director of Climate, Land and Water, and his team. They have put all their energy and commitment to this successful event. This morning during lunchtime, the Director of WMO asked the Ambassador of Netherlands, why is Netherlands interested in drought? Why are you committed to this? I turn to me. I live in a country where I only know droughts. It's rarely to have a rainful year. And I have an example. I have some friends visiting me, and I invited some kids to play with them. And they are doing drawing. One put a mountain green, and the other put in brown. And the other one said, why are you putting this in brown? And this is my reality. I see the word in brown. And this is the reason why I am really committed to this agenda. Not only because I am part of FAO management, for sure, but personally I have interest because I know what people suffer in my country. I know the famines coming from drought and all the consequences linked to water shortage and whatever we have heard and listened today. And I believe we discuss a lot, we share experience, we learn best successful stories from countries, but if you put attention on the discussion, all of us, we mention farmers, 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 but they were the missing link here. And I think the next phase is how we can bring what we discuss here, what we commit here, to the farmers, because they are the ones affected, but also they are the game changer in this process. And we have, coming from the communiqué, what are the next steps, but I think how we can bring farmers to the debate is a very important point also. And as it has been said, we cannot stop a drought, but we can avoid drought becoming a famine. We show here that we have the tools, we have the techniques, we have the technology, we know what we need to do, but we are still drought moving to famine. And I think this is what we expect to come out from this event, and we have a lot of good examples we can move forward. And the director of the WMO said this morning that although drought represents only 6% of the disaster, they cause 35% of disaster-related deaths, and is enormous. We, in the discussion, we know and we come with a proactive approach in coping with drought. And also the linkage between drought, livelihoods and economies worldwide. And you can see how economies can be stemmed, how they can be affected, but how we can also avoid. But I think we need to look forward, as it has been said. We have to build on experience. We need to build on the common knowledge and being more innovative in the drought management. And I would like to come with some key points. They have been repeated. I know that we don't have much time, but to me, the importance of data and information is crucial. The need to have timely, reliable data is also for both farmers and decision makers is very important. We should invest more on having data, timely and reliable data. The director of the WMO referred today that we have around 70 countries not having good institutions and good data. We need to invest in helping those countries to have the data they need to predict and to prevent and to have an early warning system. We have technologies, we have innovation, and it has been said here how we can link technology innovation to farmers. And it has been said that the farmers sometimes they don't have the capacity to access is another point, but maybe the innovation and the technology are not suitable for the level of the farmers we have. How we can really have technologies appropriated to the level of the farmers, and how we can bring the traditional knowledge and practices. Again, the role of governments. The Minister of Namibia referred that the Namibia government created a disaster risk management directorate in the Prime Minister's office. This is an example how committed is the government and at the highest level. And we refer here also the need of political will, the need of commitment coming from the government. And this I would like to refer and to stress that this is also a very important point. We refer to transfer of knowledge, and I think that South-South cooperation, we heard here from Mexico, we heard from Ethiopia, and for several countries, how we can help to this transfer of technology and from farmers to farmers. The need for a regional dimension and an intersectoral approach has also been referred today in our discussion, and the importance of having a cross-sector coordinated approach and to move to a joint programming. We cannot have projects here and there, but we need to have a global framework and a joint programming. And this calls on all of us, how the government, the United Nations, our donors, the civil society and the private sector could be together and to have a joint programming, because investment is important. It has been also referred here that we need to have we need to have investment, we need to have finance, and we also need to have incentives. And they are also very important points from our discussion today. We refer the linkage between drought and the 2030 agenda, and it has been said that drought can affect the achievement of the 17 goals. And drought can be a game changer for bringing more partnership, but if you don't have a proactive action toward drought, it can jeopardize the achievement of the Sustainable Development Agenda. And this is a very important point. And I believe we refer how we can bring the outcome of the meeting today to the NCCD meeting in China, how we can take it to other forums, but I think to high-level political forum, maybe not the next one in June, in July, but one of the high-level political forum as our contribution, how drought and our proposal can be important for the Sustainable Development Goals, especially if you see the SDG Sustainable Development Agenda start from the one left behind. And I think the ones left behind, they are the ones suffering from drought, and they are very important here. I would like to close this successful meeting, but before then, again, to thank all of you, to thank our interpreters. I know they work beyond the time, but those things happen, and you are very important for our communication, for our exchange of information and experience. And I think what is important now is to act. We need to have action. The actions are here in the communiqué, and let's be forward-looking, and let's join our forces to work to see how we can not avoid drought, but how we can reduce the impact of drought. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria Elena Semedo. A strong message, and I know for sure that with your personal leadership, you will lead us the way, and you can count on us at your side. Before I invite you to a drink, it's a real honor and a pleasure for me to thank Eduardo and his team. And his team are the ladies sitting in the front and in the back, and the gentlemen in the front and in the back, for the excellent work they have done. Because without them, it wouldn't have been possible. And it wouldn't have been possible to start rewriting the story of drought. Thank you so much. And of course, once again, I would like to thank you, and on behalf of my colleagues of Iran, FAO, and the Netherlands, you are all invited now to enjoy a light refreshment and drinks arranged in the cafeteria on the 8th floor to meet each other, to make the first steps towards implementation, but also to celebrate the FAO Water Report on drought characteristics and management in Central Asia and Turkey. And although you think, oh, it's only about Central Asia and Turkey, I think if you read the report, and I've seen already a draft copy of that report, you see many of the key messages are not only there for Central Asia and Turkey, but for all of us. So I really would like to thank you again, and join us at the 8th floor, because there we can enjoy a little bit of the beautiful weather in Rome, and we can enjoy each other's company. Join us at the 8th floor, and thank you so much.